Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we got to talk about what's going on in the city of Chicago, because on this channel, we've documented over and over again that theft is completely out of control in that city, and it has gotten so bad that we've covered stories like all the Walmarts in Chicago closing, multiple grocery store closures, multiple business closures, and now Mayor Brandon Johnson has decided that the solution is for the city in a few years, because obviously they're never going to be able to get anything done in a short period of time, to open up their own city-run grocery store. Now, this is obviously ridiculous and absurd, and we're going to get into it, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who signed up over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And thank the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
Despite that $500 million city deficit, the mayor is exploring the idea of opening a city-owned grocery store to promote food equity.
So first of all, I love the local news and the way that they open this segment. They open it immediately by talking about how Mayor Brandon Johnson is already in the hole, $500 million, $500 million in terms of Chicago's city deficit. And despite that, he is now proposing opening up a city-owned grocery store due to the fact that he and Lori Lightfoot before him have let theft get completely out of hand, and they couldn't imagine, prosecuting the thieves and restoring order in Chicago. So the solution is for Brandon Johnson to open a grocery store, and it's going to be an absolutely terrible plan when they talk about food equity as the reason why they need to open the grocery store. Now remember, Walmart has closed 4 different locations. Whole Foods has closed a bunch of different locations. All of this is due to theft. Theft is completely out of control in the city of Chicago. Illinois just got rid of cash bail completely, so they could do things to reverse course on the laws that allow the thieves to run wild, but of course they're not doing so, and now they're going with this model, which is opening up a city-run grocery store that won't cost the taxpayers anything, according to Mayor Brandon Johnson, but according to reality, absolutely would.
This is simply a plan, and one done in small cities, but if the city-owned grocery store gets up and running, and that is a big if, Chicago will be the largest city to accomplish this.
So one of the things that is absolutely crucial for you guys to understand is that these municipality-run grocery stores actually do exist in the United States of America under limited circumstances, and those limited circumstances are as follows. You have smaller towns or rural communities that don't have enough people to sustain a grocery store, to make a grocery store profitable. So what ends up happening is that the municipality, in conjunction with the state, will typically open up a grocery store in order to serve the people in the population, because again, on their own, they cannot sustain a profitable grocery store. This should not be true in the third largest city in the United States of America, the city of Chicago. That's why this is notable, even separate from these other rare niche instances where this tends to happen, because Chicago has everything it would need in order to support a grocery store. In fact, I believe Chicago's population is around 2.7 million, and your standard grocery store, and the numbers vary depending on where you look, says you need between 3,500 and 5,000 people who are like regular customers to sustain a grocery store. This is, of course, factoring in a reasonable level of theft. But of course, in the city of Chicago, they don't prosecute anybody. They just let the criminals loot absolutely everything. So now we have an incident where the city of Chicago, even though they should sustain grocery stores 100 times over, is resorting to this.
Many neighborhoods on the south and west sides are without quality grocery stores. Windows are boarded up after private chains moved out. Take this former Aldi at 76 in Ashland in Auburn Gresham. It closed more than a year ago.
So they start by talking about this Aldi that's in this part of Chicago that has been closed for well over a year. As you can see, it's all boarded up. It looks like urban decay perfectly on display, and this is something that is going on across the bad neighborhoods in the city of Chicago due to the fact that Kimberly Fox, Lori Lightfoot before Brandon Johnson, and Brandon Johnson himself refuse to go after any criminals for anything. They've limited their police so they can't engage in pursuits. If you are at a store and you try to stop a criminal, chances are you will be charged criminally for it. And obviously, as a result, a business like a grocery store that typically operates on thin profit margins can't sustain the elevated theft in this area, so they end up closing. And by the way, Walmart was taking it on the chin in the city of Chicago for something about 10 years, but they stayed open. However, the increase in theft beyond what they were experiencing before, which was already elevated, is what ended up killing Walmart. The same is true for this Aldi. These were not profitable locations before the Black Lives Matter riots. These were places that maybe were breaking even, were probably losing a little money, but they decided to stay in there because they had a foothold in there anyway, but the theft just got out of control. And again, these people have allowed this to happen. They voted for Brandon Johnson, the most crime-ridden areas, voted for the more defund the police candidate than Lori Lightfoot, so it's hard for me to have sympathy for everybody in this area, although I do say I don't want people in the United States of America to be completely without grocery stores, even if it's of their own making. I happen to be a citizen of this country, not a resident of Chicago, thanks God, thanks the Lord, but it doesn't look good that a major city, the third largest city in the United States of America, can't even sustain a grocery store.
All of our stores are closing. And so now we have to go outside of our neighborhoods.
Native Southsider Shelley Williams welcomes any plans to bring grocery stores back. That includes Mayor Brandon Johnson's newest initiative to get the city into the grocery chain business.
So I think that's a good idea that Mayor Johnson is picking up the slack where these big store chains are leaving.
Now look, while a part of me does feel bad for this woman because she's like, hey, I have to go outside of my neighborhood, outside of this whole area in order to shop for groceries, that kind of attitude is exactly why I don't feel too bad for her, because she's talking about Brandon Johnson picking up the slack left behind by these grocery store chains when Brandon Johnson is not addressing the thing that's driving these chains out of business. There's a reason why other places in this country with lower populations than the city of Chicago can operate a grocery store perfectly fine. And this is because they take retail theft seriously. They prosecute criminals. This is what they have to do. You had all these warning signs that led up to these closures, like locking up huge portions of the stores. These were all ignored by Brandon Johnson and Lori Lightfoot that preceded him, by District Attorney Kimberly Fox, still being ignored to this day. And now they're saying the solution is for the city to get in the grocery store business, when I got news for you, that might suffice in terms of actually having a location, maybe in 2025 or 2026, within this geographic area, but it does not solve the problem in that you've allowed criminality to run so wild that it's not profitable to sell groceries in the city of Chicago.
Under Mayor Johnson's proposal, the city would use economic development grants. Yumi Grisby, the administration's policy chief, says the city will team up with an organization to open a city-owned grocery in one of Chicago's food deserts.
And so we are not spending any taxpayer dollars, right?
So here you have somebody who's repping this specific policy. She's saying we're not spending any taxpayer dollars. And this is true in that they're not spending taxpayer dollars right now from the city of Chicago. They're spending taxpayer dollars from the state of Illinois and from the federal government. So you and I are paying for the fact we're redistributing, we're giving welfare to people who won't stop the theft within their own community. So guess what? This just started impacting you guys who decided that you were going to leave the city of Chicago, who would never go and visit the city of Chicago because they can't get their own crap together. And she's smiling about it. She's talking about, oh, don't worry, it's not going to affect the city's budget. It's this other money from the taxpayer, and it's going to be okay because we're not paying for it. This is the exact thing I didn't want them to get to. I wanted them to actually pay the cost of their theft and then prosecute the criminals as a result of that. But instead, they're deciding to pass the buck yet again onto people who don't live in these criminal communities, taxpayers like myself and like many of you out there in the audience.
The major grocery chains claim they left these communities because it just was not profitable. So it begs the question how Mayor Johnson can flip that narrative.
And so it's not necessarily about profitability. It really is about what is the impact on Chicagoans.
So right there, this guy brings up the fact that all these stores, these profitable companies, these businesses who have efficiently figured out a way to deliver groceries to huge portions of this country say that Chicago isn't profitable. And in response, she says it's not about profitability. It's about serving the needs of the residents who are making grocery stores not profitable, aka you will be paying for the dramatic losses in this grocery store.
how does a grocery store get pushed ahead of crime and safety over other things?
I don't want to say that this is taking a priority. I would like to say that overall, it's not also about a grocery store. What it is about increasing access to healthy options and to food for all Chicagoans.
So this is also a good question. Why is Brandon Johnson prioritizing this over crime and all these other issues in the city? Better question would be, if crime is what is driving the grocery stores out of business in the first place, why are you addressing the problem all the way in Section 27 rather than going to Section 1, which is, of course, they're not prosecuting criminals for these thefts. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, I don't feel bad for them. They voted for this. The most criminal neighborhoods of Chicago voted for Brandon Johnson, so they're getting the governance that they deserve. And honestly, when it comes to the city of Chicago in particular, I don't object to people putting that in the comments. However, it's actually significantly worse than you could think, because not only did the people in this community vote for it, not only did they witness crime spike like crazy across the city of Chicago and drive these grocery stores out of business, but when replacement grocery stores actually came to open up in the city of Chicago with different business models meant to serve a customer base that residents of Chicago showed themselves to be, they protested those grocery stores because they didn't like the fact that it ruined the aesthetic of the neighborhood. No, I'm not joking. Get a load of this video from 5 months ago in one of these very same neighborhoods that they're now talking about as a food desert, as if it wasn't something of their own making.
Now! If we don't get it, shut it down! If we don't get it, shut it down!
New here at 6, this video just in from the Englewood neighborhood where residents are protesting the opening of a new Save-A-Lot. The discount grocery store is replacing Whole Foods, which moved out last year.
Yeah, this is not a joke. This is over 5 months old in terms of this video, but it's about the Whole Foods that moved out 18 months ago, and a grocery store that actually decided to pay for this location. It's called Save-A-Lot. It's a chain I'm not familiar with, but it is a discount grocery store. Tried to move in, and then people started protesting that grocery store because they believed that they were entitled to a Whole Foods, and you putting in a discount grocery store made their bad neighborhood look bad, even though, again, the reason why the Whole Foods ended up closing is because the people in this neighborhood are bad people. They were stealing from the Whole Foods, and they could not operate that business at a profit. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic, if you think I'm joking, if you think that these people are not protesting due to their overwhelming and blinding sense of entitlement, get a load of this.
And those protesters say they deserve better. Whole Foods exit left the community without good options for fresh food, and protesters say they're concerned about quality.
These people actually came out and protested a grocery store opening because they thought that they were entitled to the Whole Foods that they looted out of the neighborhood. They believe that they have a divine right from God above to steal from Whole Foods because honestly, how can you expect these people to loot non-organic produce? How can you expect these people to loot non-asparagus water that costs over $6 over at Whole Foods? You're basically disrespecting them, and you're probably, and definitely, and you know this is going to come up, an evil white racist if you disagree. Absolute objective entitlement, and honestly, I think these people deserve a little bit of humbling, and I think that they deserve losing their grocery stores just based on their behavior. You could have changed this. You could vote for politicians that will actually take retail theft seriously. You continuously put people like Kimberly Fox in the head of the Cook County District Attorney's Office, like Brandon Johnson as your mayor, and these are the results that you get. And again, Johnson is worse than Lightfoot, who they just voted out, who started this whole process to the descent of the city of Chicago. They always had issues with crime. They were always worse in terms of criminality than the city of New York, but they've just let theft explode since the Black Lives Matter riots. And when you do that, what are you expecting but these grocery stores to close? And then when new grocery stores open and you protest demanding that they close, what do you expect other than a so-called food desert?
Now they're fighting the store altogether, saying the discount grocer has a reputation for serving lackluster product.
It's like they're in Englewood, so they don't reserve fresh fruits and vegetables and stuff. They'll take what they give.
Will you shop here?
No. I can't afford to feed this to my grandson.
City leaders say they tried to get other businesses to take over the store, but Save-A-Lot, operated by Yellow Banana, was the only corporation to show interest.
Look, to be clear, you don't deserve it. You looted the Whole Foods out of existence. And by the way, the city actually tried inviting other businesses. Nobody would take it other than Save-A-Lot. But I guess beggars can be choosers, because not only are these people angry and want something else, but they're willing to protest the only game in town that would actually come in to their crappy neighborhood.
16th Ward Alderman Stephanie Coleman says this community hasn't felt heard.
We want a fresh, affordable, preferably black-owned, but we want a grocery operator that's going to have employees that look like us in our community.
We want to have a real conversation with our community.
After an hour of tense back and forth outside the store with those protesters, the owners vowed to hold off on officially opening.
And we agreed to meet with the alderman and her representatives to kind of talk about what they'd like to see from us and how we can get things onto a better track.
The owners say at issue here is the Save-A-Lot reputation, and that this store plans to operate differently. That includes hiring employees from the neighborhood, hosting a locally run coffee shop inside, and hiring hot food vendors like Lakeisha Hunter from Englewood.
Owners have to change the narrative. It's going to take time.
After this meeting of the minds, there's no official date for the store to reopen just yet, but the owners do say they'll now be donating any perishable food and the food that was prepared for this soft opening to a local shelter here. Reporting in Englewood, I'm Marissa Perlman, CBS 2 News.
Get this alderwoman off my screen. The fact that you're rallying around this person who says we need a fresh, also affordable, and also preferably black-owned grocery store in this spot is ridiculous and absurd. No business will open in this spot except for Save-A-Lot, and you are protesting it. Now, 5 months later, you're going to tell me about how the federal taxpayers, the state taxpayers, need to subsidize a welfare grocery store for your area? Absolutely not. Deny them the grants immediately. They do not deserve it. They are ungrateful people. This alderwoman needs to be out of office. We need a whole purge of the Chicago legislature. We need a whole purge of their mayor's office, and we need Kimberly Fox to leave the Cook County District Attorney's office before I'm willing to spend a dime on this area. It's absolutely shameful, disgusting in every possible way, that even when everything closes and somebody decides to step up, they reject it because it doesn't match what they believe they're entitled to. You want a Whole Foods? You want a Walmart? You want a variety of grocery stores? Stop stealing from the ones that you have. Stop putting them out of business. I guarantee you, people will come into your neighborhood to sell you stuff when you stopped acting so criminally. Hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Chicago, doing a welfare grocery store. Till next time.